Good morning and welcome to today's episode of Nadya's Identity Files. The second week of December has already creeped upon us, and that means the holidays and New Year are literally around the corner, including my birthday. My birthday's on New Year's Eve. I cannot believe that we've reached the end of the year so quickly. Next week, we're going to have a brief year in summary to focus on events that have taken place over the year that really relate directly to identity and identity news. But, with 2017 just a few weeks away, a lot of people invariably are starting to think about their New Year's resolutions. Am I going to lose weight? Am I going to reach my dream goal this year, or my dream career this year? But another thing that people are thinking about quite heavily, perhaps, at least some, are they going to meet their soulmate next year? Is their dating life going to be taken to the next level? So today's segment, what we're going to explore is we're going to talk about identity issues in the dating space, specifically online, because with the advent of apps like Tinder and Bumble, it's become really difficult for a lot of people to find love in the modern age. So with that said, we're going to have two really amazing guests today. We're going to have Simona Fosco, who is an iconic model, actor, and recipient of the Global Excellence Award in Women's Entrepreneurship and founder of world-renowned Perfect 12 matchmaking service, to talk about identity in the dating space, specifically what it's like being a matchmaker and all of the interesting issues that arise in that realm. And then additionally, we're going to have Kimberly Kessler come on, who once was a casting director for The Bachelor, The Bachelorette, NBC's Love in the Wild, and Mark Burnett's Coupled, as well as a host of other dating shows. So we're going to talk about how shows like that have really kind of turned the tables on the way we self-present online dating apps, and just in general, and even just our day-to-day interactions with each other and gender stereotypes and all of that. Interesting stuff. So it's going to be a lot to explore. I'm really looking forward to today's segment. But before we dig into dating woes, of course, it's time for identity news. And I want to start off with talking a bit more about identity politics and identity liberalism. Since the publication of The End of Identity Liberalism, written by Mark Lilla for the New York Times, other scholars have also been joining in the conversation. Most recently, another article for Inside Higher Ed explored Lilla's piece in a bit more depth, wondering if the effort to be encompassing and to be more diverse, particularly with the left, with the progressive side, with Democrats, is actually making us be more divisive and rather than more together. So it's really, really interesting, this conversation, albeit obviously it's very complex, a lot of stuff to think about. In short, Lilla's article emphasizes how identity liberalism polarizes other groups of people, in spite of, again, trying to be as encompassing as possible, especially to underserved populations of people, including women, LGBTQI people, persons of color. The issue that is explored in this article is considering if identity liberalism was the cause of Donald Trump's win in the presidential election, insofar as a lot of people who are working class whites, they felt they weren't heard or included in the conversation. But at the same time, of course, people from working class populations who happen to be white, they're not subject to the same systemic racism and oppression that persons of color are, but all the same, they are still a marginalized group of people because of the class system that still operates in this country. They don't have the same rights and opportunities. The same opportunities, they do have the same rights, but they don't have the same opportunities that perhaps people from higher income classes of people might have. So this is a very interesting conversation. I'm noticing that the identity liberalism, identity politics is continuing to crop up regularly, and I think it is something that, the left-leaning folks need to think about. How are we going to be more inclusive? Because at the end of the day, we're not going to see progress without unity, and that means unity of all persons. It's time to get off the pretentious elitist pedestal and open up our eyes to other people from other backgrounds. We can still be progressive and still acknowledge that marginalized groups of people are subject and victim to oppression and systemic racism. But of course, a lot of people say that part of the issue is that people from the right-leaning side don't always want to hear this, but hopefully we'll get to a place where they at one point will. In other news, very, 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 very tragic over the weekend, Oakland's identity faced a big, big tragedy. I'm sure most people have heard by now about the big warehouse fire that took place on Friday night at a warehouse dubbed locally as the Ghost Ship. The building had faced numerous complaints by locals in terms of the safety and not possessing enough exits for people who use the building. And as a result, somebody at a big party over on Friday night must have, again, I don't know, they're still investigating the cause, but it seems quite likely that somebody might have dropped a cigarette or a match was lit, and the place was described by many as a tinderbox because of the numerous antiques and the unsafe space. And my heart is really, it's with the victims, of the friends and family of this horrible tragedy. It's quite possible that the city of Oakland will face litigation as a result of this due to not more aggressively investigating the safety of this building. And of course, the artistic community of Oakland too is facing, a big stab to their identity. So I can only hope that things will clean up there soon. And again, my thoughts, positive energy, prayers go out to the victims, of the friends and family of this horrible event. Really, really tragic. But to end this news brief on a more upbeat note, last week also, President Obama finally put a temporary block on the Dakota Access Pipeline project, which was cause for great celebration by Standing Rock protesters. In 2014, Obama had made a promise to protect the Sioux tribe, and hopefully will be finalizing the stop to this project before the end of his term. It's really, really important that we respect and cherish Indigenous people by protecting their land and water. Their identities and safety depends on it. So fingers crossed this will happen, and we'll continue to see progress made in South Dakota. So when we come back, we will explore the world of matchmaking with Simona Fusco, followed by the discussion with Kimberly Kessler, who will discuss the impacts of dating shows, what those impacts have on real-life dating in America. And at the very end of today's segment, we will have a roundtable discussion about all things identity and dating. Stay tuned.